Right, so this is going to be the part 2 of some important dates you actually have to pay close attention to when it comes to real estate contracts, or you in the process of buying a property, right? So what are some of these dates that we're actually going to pay attention to, apart from the ones I talked about in my previous video? So the first date for this part 2 is going to be the title contingency deadline. I had mentioned in one of my videos that you should make sure you get those title companies to search and make sure the title of that house you're going to purchase have no other people attached to it, right? So it's your duty as a buyer to get to check these things. So you look for these companies that are specialized in doing all this research for you, and pay them, and then they will make sure there is nobody that is going to show up and say, hey, I have a stake in this property. This property was handed to me by a so person. Because of course, these title companies will actually make sure that if anybody has a stake in it, they're going to reach out to them to tell them, hey, there's somebody interested in buying this house. If you have anything against this property, you better come now and talk. Or they give them a particular day, right? So you want to make sure you get this title done, because you don't want to, at the end of the day, not have a clear title report, or not have a title that contains no liens or honor any other ownership dispute, right? So you want to make sure that the house you're getting has a clear title and it only belongs to you. And of course, there is a date for you to get this thing done. So the number 2 is going to be the closing date. The closing date is that D-Day, right? The final day where you go and sign that paperwork and say, the seller says, I am hereby handing over the house to you because I have received my money. And now you say, okay, I have made all the requirements that the seller and I agreed upon, and I was able to bring forth the money, be it cash, be it by whatever means, maybe your loan or any other thing you're getting this house with, and you were able to satisfy the seller, right? So it's a day when the final transfer of ownership occurs and the buyer takes possession of the property. Is typically specific in the contract the day which this thing is going to hold. Sometimes the day that it was specified in the contract, it actually doesn't really work on that day, because might be various factors were missing. Maybe there was a little bit of push through. Maybe the actual day the buyer wasn't able to meet up with the finances. Could they move these days? Of course, it's possible. Everything boils down to negotiation. So there is no particular one shoe fit all. So if the seller is okay with you, the buyer, moving the date a little bit, or if the buyer is okay with you, the seller, moving the date a little bit, that is still fine. But however, okay, you both have to be in agreement of those date changes. All right. So the number 3 thing for this video is going to be earnest money deposit due date. So earnest money is money that the buyer has to put up front to show that they're interested in purchasing this property. And earnest money could be paid in different ways. You could decide to pay with a personal check. You could decide, I want to pay this with a bank check, a cashier's check, or you want to do a wire transfer from your bank to maybe wherever the money is being directed to. But regardless of which means you decide to pay this money, earnest money are supposed to show as good faith and commitment to the transaction. So you want to put these monies down so the seller is certainly sure that you're interested, you're committed, And of course, right, you're not just going to play around. So make sure you guys, I'm sure these things are agreed upon, right? There's no particular amount, so it's just how much you specify these things on the day you're actually putting your offer, right? So the day you're putting your offer, before the seller accepts that offer, that amount is specified on the offer, saying this is how much I'm willing to put down as earnest money. So if the seller is accepting it, of course, that means they know this is how much you're willing to put down, and that's the same exact amount you will have to put down after the seller agrees to it. Number 3 is going to be contingency removal deadline. So this is the date by which buyers must remove all outstanding contingency or conditions specified in the contract. So after these dates, transactions will become more binding, right? So if they didn't remove any contingencies, well, and this date is past due, of course, every other thing remains binding, right? And withdrawals from this contract may result in a loss of earnest money. Remember that earnest money that you get in good faith and showing that you're committed to buying this house. Voila. If all these outstanding contingencies are not removed, that means maybe you're not going to get that money back. So when you're paying for these things, you're going into buying these properties. These are some things that might happen. We don't ask for them to happen, but however, be open-minded that if some of these dates are not met, maybe your money is not going to be refunded back to you. Okay. And the last thing for this video today is going to be the default deadline, and that's going to be the last date I'm going to be talking about. So the default deadline. The default deadline is in case either party fails to fulfill their obligations under the contract. Because a seller has an obligation to fulfill, the buyer equally has an obligation to fulfill. And these dates may be specific. So if these dates are not met, they might have a little bit of grace period between it to resolve any issues that the seller or the buyer wasn't able to fulfill during that time. Maybe let's say the repairs, right? Maybe the seller wasn't able to fix all these repairs that they agreed to getting it fixed. So all these things come into play, right? So before you consider it a default, there is a grace period to maybe the seller being able to get these things repaired, right? So it's more safe for you to go into that house. And maybe if they didn't fix it before this default deadline or other stuff, then there could be a default in the contract. That means it didn't hold. So everybody walks away, okay? So just make sure you keep in mind with these deadlines. Be aware of these critical deadlines and adhere to them to ensure a smooth transaction and success. Because at the end of the day, we all either want to get this house as a buyer or get the proceeds as a seller and enjoy, right? So make sure you pay attention to these dates and do not let the due dates that is specified on the contract pass you by. Okay, stay ahead of it and on top of it. Make sure you ask your agents how you could get these things done on a timely manner. Do not forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave comments. And please be reminded, this is just for educational purposes only. Do your own proper research and ask questions to professionals. And if you don't know anything, get an attorney to explain some of these dates to you. Right? Stay safe and healthy until next time.